Okay. Please rise.
For the Honorable Judge.
You may be seated. Today in court, we are hearing the charges against Miss Madison in an assault of a police officer. Members of the jury, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to listen carefully to the evidence and arguments which are presented in this case and fulfill your duty to determine a sentence that is fair for both the defendant and the victim and the community? If so, say I do.
I do.
Perfect. Prosecution, are you ready to begin?
Yes.
The prosecution may make its opening statement.
We are brought here today in the court of law for the case of a delinquent Army police officer. The jury here has the duty to enforce the laws of the courthouse. It is our intent today to prove to the court that the defendant, Andrew Madison, is guilty on numerous charges. On Wednesday, November 27, 2002, a Street Law High School, two high school students who are the defendant, Andrew Madison, and the defense witness, Jamie Lincoln, were idling near the school. At approximately 3:30 p.m., they were questioned by patrol officers and were soon apprehended for assaulting a police officer and disorderly conduct. The defense here today will attempt to prove to the jury that Bates used excessive force against the minor, which evidence will show to be incorrect. That the attack was initiated by the officer, which again will be proven wrong, and the morality of Madison, which we will elaborate on his recent violent nature. Madison will be shown to have initiated the scuffle with intent to harm Officer Bates and was reacted upon appropriately by the officer. The witnesses will provide testimony that proves without a shadow of doubt that the defendant, Andrew Madison, is guilty of these charges. It is the jury's duty to decide without bias and based on the facts presented during this trial. The jury may hear testimony that may endear the jury towards the defendant or towards the defendant's upbringing, but the defendant's character nor her upbringing bear any relevance towards the charges levied against the defendant. Some of the jurors may have a negative opinion of police officers or the work that police officers perform in the course of their duties. Testimony will show that the officers involved were following proper procedure for apprehending the suspect, and I wish to remind the jury that police officers have the very same human rights that are afforded to all of us, including the right not to be assaulted and defending themselves in belief of imminent danger of bodily harm. Whether or not it is proven that the attack was accidental, Madison had still resisted arrest from a police officer and had harmed an officer in the disarming of the weapon. Today in this trial, we will prove that Madison is completely guilty of unorderly conduct and battery on an officer and to have committed meditated assault as well.
Defense, present your opening statement.
Your Honor, and the fellow jury, we are here today to prove the innocence of this young woman. On Wednesday, November 22nd, Andrea Madison and her good friend Jamie Lincoln were outside the school having a conversation. Officer Bates and Officer Major stepped out of the vehicle and approached the two young ladies. Officer Bates asked the two young ladies if they went to the school and to show some ID. Andrea would start to pull out her ID, and all of a sudden, Bates just lunges at her with no probable cause, and causing her to break her wrist and to cause her to have multiple stab wounds, plus her own punch herself with a open. So, because of so Andrea Madison and then they arrested Andrea Madison and also arrested Jamie Lincoln. The defense attorneys and I are proving today that in fact she did in fact not assault the officer, as well as to prove not only they used police brutality and excessive force, which breaks District of Justice Code 314, which is the use of unnecessary and wanton force.
Does the prosecution wish to call any witnesses?
Yes, we call Officer Bates
I call Officer Bates to the stand and ask the bailiff to place him under oath.
Do you solemnly swear to speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so under God?
Yes.
You may proceed.
Prosecution, please present your case.
Officer Bates, why were you there on that day? Why were you at the scene of the crime?
I was on a typical patrol with my secondary officer, Officer Major, on the day of the attack.
Why were you patrolling that particular area?
We had been asked by the SLJH high school principal to patrol the area due to the amount of violence that has occurred in the high school in the past.
So there's reasonable suspicion that there was going to be some sort of disorderly conduct around the area.
Correct.
And at one point, did you see the defendant in question?
I saw the defendant in question twice, actually. The first time was on our initial patrol where he was standing and looking extremely suspicious and smoking with another friend. And the second time was on our secondary patrol where the violence broke out.
And what was it about the second patrol that made you suspicious?
They were harassing a group of students, and because of the fact that school was out, or no, school was not out, I'm sorry, there was reasonable cause for them to not have been students of the school due to their physical attributes and the fact that there was no ID.
What happened after you saw them?
After I saw them and approached them, I asked them to pull out their student IDs, which neither one of them complied.
What happened after they weren't complying?
After they were not complying, I walked up to them and I asked them to present the IDs. They reached for the IDs, but instead of the IDs, I instinctively knew, based on the appearance of the weapon, that the defendant had a weapon in possession, and so they had to take measures.
So, if you saw someone about to pull a knife or you felt threatened by this,
Yes.
what is the standard procedure for an officer?
Standard procedure is to disarm the defendant before there is another reason to or violence.
And after you had taken down the defendant, what happened?
As soon as I had taken down the defendant, I saw that they were injured, but at that moment that was not my primary concern because of the fact that our job as police officers is to protect the greater public from the people perpetrating the violence.
Did you yourself sustain any injuries?
Yes, sir, I'm stabbed.
You're stabbed. Now, when you were asking them to give their IDs, did you give them ample time to respond and give their IDs to you?
Yes, sir.
But they did not.
Correct.
All they did was remain in silence and perhaps even antagonize you.
Yes.
See? Are you aware of what kind of knife?
Yes, sir, it was a Swiss Army knife.
A Swiss Army knife. All right. No further questions.
Thank you.
Does the defense wish to cross-examine?
Yes. Yes. Your home rules.
Oh, no, thank you.
One of my first questions would be, what were the physical attributes that showed that they weren't allowed to be at the school?
The fact that, I'm sorry, would you like to restate your question?
What were the physical attributes that meant that they weren't allowed to be at that school?
There were none. I said they were not allowed to be.
But just a little bit ago, you said that there was physical attributes that showed that they weren't at the school.
I said that would call into question the fact that if they were students at the school.
So, but what physical attributes were they?
Based on the size and based on
So-
the fact that they were smoking, which is illegal for the military.
Is a factor of like if they should be at the school or not? Because I know some students here that are really big kids that like Noah, or not actually that's perfect.
Get to the point, counselor.
Chop, chop.
At least you're not allowed to act like this in court.
I'm actually a bailiff.
I don't know what my questions are. When you're looking at when Madison was taking the knife out of his pocket,
Yes.
or actually his wallet, you said you saw something shiny. However, when I took my keys
That
out,
was
when I was
taken out of his
looking at my keys, that was shiny things on that car. So you said it was instinct that showed, or you said there was instinct that came with it.
Yes, sir.
So what happens if it was just his fault and he just tackled some innocent person?
Due to my duties as a police officer and my years of experience on the force, there is undeniable question that you are supposed to disarm the person before any violence occurs, and if I would not do that, I would not be doing my job.
But he was taken out of student ID.
But no, it's not.
What? It was student ID was in his wallet, but he was going to grab. And take out his wallet. But what happens if his wallet's like mine? Oh, there's a medal. So why would you argue someone out with just the perception of a knife? Why would you take someone out because of just perception?
That was my duty as a police
Counselor,
officer.
wrap it up.
What I'm trying to say here is, you went after Madison, a minor, who was just taking out their wallets after you asked them for their student ID. But instead of letting them take out their wallet and give them student ID, you tackled them, broke their arm, and caused them to stab themselves because of the knife in the arm. Which you didn't know there was any until you searched them.
Until I saw the knife in his pocket.
But you couldn't.
I could.
How?
Hello.
Enough, counselor, thank you.
Thank you.
Does the prosecution wish to redirect?
We would like to briefly mention that the ID was not in the wallet, as in Madison's testimony, they say that when their arm was pulled out of their pocket, the ID fell out. There is no way that the ID could have been in the wallet if they had not pulled the wallet out to pull out the ID in. What's more, we'd like to say that Madison also claimed that the knife was attached to the wallet.
Does the prosecution wish to call any more witnesses?
Yes. Andrew Madison.
You may step down. I call Andrew Madison to the stand and ask the bailiff to place him under oath.
Oh!
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, under oath?
Yes. That's not my name. I'm Miss Madison.
Miss Madison. First of all, did you attend school that day?
Yes, sir.
You did.
Yes.
You mentioned in your testimony that you brought the knife on campus with you. Not only that, but Lincoln testified that you bring it with you everywhere you go. Now, people know this. Now, you know that knife is in your pocket. You admit to consciously try concealing it while you're at school. So, you had a weapon in your pocket that you reached for, correct?
Correct. Wait. I did not reach for it, but I did have a weapon on me, yes.
Yes, but according to your testimony, you knew where it was at all times, and you knew it was there consciously. Yet you reached in the pocket with no prior officer, I have a knife in my pocket, officer, my wallet's in the same pocket as a knife, none of that. Officer recognized himself that there's a knife in his pocket, so he took measures. Now, of course, the struggle ensued. Who would you say was in possession of the knife in the majority of the struggle? You argue that your ID, your wallet, which are separate, fell out. You argue that, what connected to the keychains?
Is it accident?
All right, so it's connected to the keychain. So you had to reach for the knife to some degree. Now, you, of course, described the knife as a retractable blade with a button. You described a stiletto knife, not a switchblade. Or not a switchblade. Not a Swiss Army knife. No Swiss Army knife activates a hidden blade by a button.
It's on like a multiple thing that has gadgets on it. So you like press the little button and then gadgets like pop up, including the 2-inch blade.
There's no button.
Swiss Army knives do not come with
We would like to present the evidence of the knife in question.
May I see the picture of the evidence?
It is approved evidence legally, by the way. This is evidence.
You have permission to show it.
The jury.
Oh, the jury.
You know what
You
it's
can.
So considering the nature of your Swiss Army knife, it takes no accident to unsheath that blade. Because there's no button, and you have to take these little gadgets to get the blade out, right?
No.
You need to actively put your muscles to get that blade out.
No, sir.
Yes?
That's the point, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the evidence. Now, initially, did Officer Bates do anything to threaten your safety?
Yes. When he was walking up to me, he had his hand on his baton immediately without me doing anything wrong and came at me in like an aggressive type of way.
Can you describe at which point initiated his lunge at you?
When I was reaching into my pocket to get my ID, which he asked me to get.
So, now, of course, as the officers were, figuring you out, they both described a smile on your face prior to reaching into your pocket. A smile which looked to Lincoln. Do you recall anything of the sort?
Yes, sir.
Why did you smile to Lincoln before reaching in your pocket, which you knew your knife was in response to the officers?
I smiled to Lincoln. Do you have proof of that?
It's not something right? You made a switch.
Yes, I did make a smirk, correct.
What brought that smirk up?
I'm gonna have to discuss with my lawyers on that one.
So,
I plead the fifth.
So, in your testimony, you argue that you had no time to react, that they didn't give you time to figure it out, right?
Correct.
But the officers seem to say otherwise, that you did have time, and the pause and the reaction to the situation really implies that you had ample time to react appropriately, yet you chose not to.
What do you mean by react?
They asked to see your ID.
What did I do wrong? I was pulling out my ID. Would you like me to just stand there and stare at them and say no? I did exactly what they asked. They asked for my ID, so I reached into my pocket to grab my ID.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I'm not talking, you understand that, right? And that does give the officer reasonable suspicion that you do have a weapon on you, that you are reaching for actively, and therefore they need to take action before anyone gets hurt. That is by law their duty. You understand that?
Yes.
Make your final points.
Okay. In your testimony, you admit that you waited, okay, you established that, for the officers to get agitated. Why?
Wait, I don't think I said that. I definitely did not say that.
Lincoln also describes that you have bias against cops, though, so you're kind of right.
Yeah, I did.
She actually mentions that you had a conflict of some sort with cops in the past.
Can you recall specific events in his on me?
Can you describe it? What Lincoln said. Anyway, Lincoln describes that you were asking for ID before by the police, and that, you played a little situation, you looked at her, smiled, pulled out the ID. Oh, okay. Now, of course, you don't like authority. Everyone knows this. Your records prove it. Now, you waited for the cops to get agitated. That was intentional. You admit to that. What did you respond? That's what you did.
How's that a crime?
Because it's, what's the word that it's for? Incite. Yeah, I exploited the situation. You incited violence.
Could you say that the police walking up to me with his hand on his baton looking all superior could also do the same thing?
Looking all superior, did that scare you? Sorry about that. From their perspective, you're harassing students walking in and out of the school.
You should
You understand that,
bring a
isn't
big
it?
fat turkey bus suit.
You understand it is their job to make sure citizens are safe.
Yeah.
They had suspicion that something was going on after the pass already. So they wanted to just make sure. Now, of course, you describe your Swiss Army knife talking about this.
Okay, thank you. Here, we'll be done now.
Yeah, or are you being biased right now? Yeah.
No, I'm not. This is the actual defense. And guess what I'm about to do? Would you like to cross-examine?
Yes. You want to?
Yeah, so let's go for it. Let's not sass the judge, please.
Oh.
Yeah, King.
That's my job. I don't need to do
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell us what you were doing on the day of the incident?
Yes, I was standing on the sidewalk of the school watching the pageant that was going on, and me and my friends were just kind of messing around with some of our other friends who were part of the pageant.
And what led up to the cop coming up to you proceedings?
They said I had suspicious behavior and that I was harassing other students, but I was joking around with my friend who was part of the pageant, and my friend was also laughing about it too. So it wasn't just a random student to my friends, and it was not harassment. It was just playful joking.
And would you say you felt intimidated when the police officer came up to you?
I'm not intimidated by cops.
In your opinion, do you think he used excessive force?
Extreme.
Extreme excessive force. Well, when you reached for your pocket, were you able to think clearly of what you were doing?
It was a little bit of a high emotional situation.
Right, so you weren't able to think clearly. And as soon as you reached for your pocket, the cop just tackled you, is that right?
Correct.
Did you think that was necessary at all?
Absolutely not.
Other questions?
Does the prosecution wish to redirect?
We would like to say that in Madison's testimony, it states that the ID had fallen to the ground when Bates pulled the arm out, and yet the knife was in the defendant's hands the whole time, meaning in the pocket they were ready the knife, but not the ID. Otherwise, the ID would not have fallen onto the ground. Instead, the knife would.
Prosecution, next witness. You may step down.
Yes, I'd like to call Lincoln up.
Okay. I call Lincoln to the stand and ask the bailiff to place him under her
Do you solemnly swear to nothing but so help you God?
Yes.
So, according to Madison,
Excuse me, I did not say you could start. Prosecution, please present your case.
Lincoln, so Madison recalls during the struggle that he was yelling, "Ah, stop! Ah, ah!" Do you recall him saying anything?
Yes, he was like audibly struggling when the police officer was on the
Do you recall Madison smirking at the officer's request to see his ID?
He did smirk at me. I don't know if he smirked at the officer.
All right. Now, can you recall the events leading up to you guys being on the floor and the cops approaching from when you came out of school to that point?
When we left school, we were watching the pageant, and we were on the corner of Equality and Hope across from our school. And we were watching our friends, and one of them walked out in a big turkey costume, and we were just poking fun. We're all very joking with each other, like no one was taking it pretty seriously, we were just standing there.
And your brother was the same. Now, when asked why you were on that corner loitering, you said two things. You said, well, I want to ask you first. You said that you guys felt the need to keep tabs on who was going in and out of the building. Can you describe?
We wanted to watch our friends come in and out of the building because we wanted to talk to them and watch them go in and out of the cabins.
Okay. And then you say that the corner has good karma to it. What does that good karma relate to?
This is because of the names of the streets is all. We just think it has karma because of the equality and hope of the
Like, you're gonna have better time hanging out in that corner than another one?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have you noticed, so Madison has a reputation in the school among both staff and his peers for being rebellious. He's a consistent smoker who carries a knife around and knowingly in his pocket.
Yes.
Correct.
Correct.
So have you noticed any behavioral changes or personal action being taken as a result of the peer meditation program, mediation program? So you notice no personal changes with them? No effort to improve change, okay? Would you say Andrea actively works with authority on building a better rapport with them, and of course as a result of his training?
Yes, sir.
Further questions?
Does the defense wish to cross-examine?
Yes.
Any day now. Come on.
So, when the cops walked up to you and they asked for IDs, was Andrew Madison trying to pull out his ID? But when he was pulling out his ID, did the cop jump out at him and grab him?
Yes, sir.
And in doing so, you heard a loud pop,
Yes.
right,
Yes.
of his wrist.
Yes. There was also blood on his pants.
Yeah. So would you say that that was unlawful force against a person?
Yes.
Yeah. So in doing so, the cop, Officer Major said, take it easy to the other officer, right?
Yes, he believes that it was too forceful against my friend.
So if we're saying that a cop, Mr. Major over there, said that the other officer was putting too much force into it, I think there's a lot of unlawful force in that, wouldn't you say? Yeah. As well as Officer Bates said, this was trying to stab me before he, even the knife was seen, right?
Yes. He hadn't even taken anything out of his pocket yet.
And it's pretty obvious that after being asked, oh, take out your ID, that you would take out your ID, you were also in preparation to take out your ID as well, right?
My hand was in my pocket to take out my ID.
Yeah. So if your hand was in your pocket as well, would they assume that you were also taking out a knife?
They did not say anything to me. They looked at me, but did not do anything. An officer grabbed my arm, but after the skinnier of the two of us, and I guess they didn't see my words as harmful.
So they went after Madison, well, who also had their hand trying to take out their wallet, but they didn't go after you. But you were both trying to take out your wallets.
Yes.
I would say there's some unlawful force and unlawful, just police brutality against Madison in this situation. What'd you say? Yes. Thank you.
Does the prosecution wish to redirect?
I just wish to state that the unlawfulness comes when the attack is unprovoked. The officer saw a knife in a situation of it being actively pulled out, and in that retrospect, it would be a state of life or death in the sense of breaking the kid's arm and receiving multiple cuts. That is perfectly legal for an officer to perform, provided the situation was life or death, which she perfectly believed that she was in.
Life or death?
I don't know if they can read out, but that's over. Does the prosecution wish to call any more witnesses?
Yes, we would like to call Tommy Major to stand.
I call Tommy to stand and ask the bailiff to place his finger. You may leave. Okay, you can go.
Okay.
Do you solemnly swear to say the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yeah. Officer Tommy Baker, can you please state to the court the reason why you and Officer Bates were there?
We were just on our usual drive-by at the high school. We normally get reports of student harassment and such around this area, so we just make sure to drive by every once in a while and make a leave patrol.
Yes. And then, when you saw the students and you approached them, what gave you suspicions?
Well, judging that one of them was smoking, they were harassing one of the other students. One of them seemed to just not comply whatsoever to any of the orders that we gave them to show ID, or they just completely ignored us. They didn't even bat an eye when we approached them.
So, after the defendant reached for their pocket and saw Bates going in, what was your thought process? What did you think?
My thought process is, I didn't see anything, but I trust him enough as a cop, and I know he has really good instincts, that I knew he must have found something, which was revealed he did, because he had tackled him and he had a knife in his hand.
You trust Officer Bates?
Yes, with my life.
So, Officer Bates' record, how would you say that is?
Officer Bates' record, with the 15 years that I've worked with him, he has never showed any, excessive force.
Objection. You back?
Well, I need to hear the objection.
You said you worked with him for 15 years. However, you said in your witness statement that you've only worked with him for a year.
So stand.
Great.
So you've been working with him for a whole year?
Yeah, for a whole year. Sorry, I misread my statement.
Through all of the time, all the assignments you've been on with him, he's had good judgments?
Yeah, good judgment, and he's never showed any excessive harm to anybody.
No excessive harm. And if you were the one in Officer Bates' position, where you saw the knife in the defendant's pocket, what would your reaction be?
Probably the same as Bates, as it is just common procedure, taught to us in Police Academy, that if we believe that there is harm coming, we're to detain and disarm the individual as soon as possible.
And given this circumstance, do you believe that Bates used excessive force?
I do not believe so.
That's all.
Does the defense wish to cross-examine?
Yes.
You may present your case.
Let's just start this off. Is it legal for an 18-year-old to smoke? I remember this is before the law came out that it's 21.
Yes, it is.
Yes. So it's not illegal that Madison was smoking, right?
No.
Yes. All right. You also said that Bates is better dealing with people that are really tough. Wouldn't you say it's a little bit biased?
No.
And also, in coming up to these two adults and teenagers, you said you never noticed a knife in their pocket. When Madison was reaching for his pocket, you said you never noticed a knife, right?
Not while he was reaching his pocket, but I definitely noticed it after it was in there.
But before, when he was reaching into his pocket, to grab something, grab his ID, you would have thought he was grabbing his ID, right? Yes. And it is said,
Don't look at me.
you said that Bates was really quick to action. So do you think he's ever made some decisions that were wrong because of his quick to action mentality?
I think that it is a very admirable attribute of him. It has gotten us out of trouble a lot of times.
But it's also something that could have gone the wrong way, just like now.
I don't believe so.
It was also said that you noticed Madison's arm bruising up and bulging.
Yes,
And you said that the cops would take it easy, right?
I did.
Why didn't you stop him?
Because at the, I tried to stop him verbally, I said, take it easy. But then after that point, I noticed that there was a knife in the hand. At that point, it is totally legal and totally justified for us to try and detain and disarm the culprit.
However, the culprit was disarmed at that time. And that was out of his hand when
It was already attempted assault of an officer. We are allowed to detain and detain the suspect in any manner.
So when you mean any man, that could be taken to a different type of way, just where you can assault someone, right? Like how Bates did Madison when he break his arm and also having the knife stab him multiple times.
Make your final points.
You also said that if you were in Bates' situation, you would have done exactly as Bates did. However, in your witness statement, you said that you were very talkative. You're more of a talker in these type of situations instead of going after and being quick to action. That's a little bit of contradiction, wouldn't you say?
I prefer not to get into the heat of the moment, but when it comes to getting a knife drawn on me, I would do what I've been taught as the standard procedure in the police academy. I would do what I've been taught to do, and that was what Bates did.
But you also said each cop has their own way of handling it. You would have handled it a different way. Because you are a talker.
Mostly, if it came to my
Thank you.
personal
That's
self-defense.
enough. It's good. You may step down. Would the defense like to call any witnesses?
Yes.
Yeah?
I'd like Snow to come up too.
Okay, well, hold up there. Go back. Snow. I call Snow to stand after bailiff to place another oath.
Can you promise me about counting their shoes, their house shoes, and then you write their shoes?
You may now present your case. Don't shush.
In your witness statement, you said that Madison was respectful towards you, and even tossed you jokes around with you. Would you say that's true?
Correct.
As well as when you got in a fight, it was actually him who thought that it was unfair to the rest of the boys to get in detention, right?
That is yes and no. I had said that Madison and the other child that he got in a fight with both saw that it was unfair and that the school system was treating him wrong and that he didn't deserve suspension.
Yeah. You also said he was a bright young man as well, right? That's all. Thank you.
Would the prosecution like to cross-examine?
Yes.
Ms. Snow, you have been working at this school for a long time now.
That is correct. For over 20 years.
And over these 20 years, you say you've become a little bit of era.
That's correct.
And is it true that Miss Madison transferred from a previous school with a bit of a record?
That is correct. She transferred her sophomore year and had many behavioral problems in her last school, and it was clear that she was not a good leader.
And for the first year Madison was here, how was their behavior? You said it was going well.
Well, that was after we've had a few sessions but I have been getting multiple disciplinary complaints from Madison's teachers that saying that the behavior is atrocious, that there's anger issues, and there's random outbursts.
So Madison clearly has a problem with authority.
Yes, that's correct.
And these present years, would you say Madison's problem with authority is continuing?
That is correct.
That's correct. Now, Madison has joined a program, a peer review program,
It is the peer meditation program.
peer meditation program. Can you explain what that is?
The peer meditation program is when students are struggling at home or socially or educationally, and they can come to the program, they can get one-on-one help, one-on-one counseling, or just to sit there and socialize and write. But we started to notice that Madison came into our program, that a bunch of other students that Madison hung out with started joining the program to skip classes, and really have been starting to think that they actually don't want to try to solve the problems.
So what you're saying is, it's possible that Madison has used this program simply to skip out of their classes and for their own benefit.
That is correct.
And you have said that Madison seems to be doing better these past few years. However, the record says otherwise.
Yes, Madison does have the potential to get a higher GPA, around a 2.8 or higher, if she applied herself in school, but she does not try in the classes, and she doesn't really care about authority, and does what she wants when she wants to.
So Madison has gone against authority multiple times in their whole record.
That is correct.
And is it true that they have received multiple warnings and detentions, but it still goes on?
That is correct.
I'd like to show the jury Madison's record, if I can do that. Madison's record. That's not bad. Madison's record of detentions and warnings for the past 2 years. And in Madison's freshman year, the year he transferred, you said he got into a fight.
And that was his sophomore year.
It was his sophomore year. So in this fight, how bad was the fight?
The fight was to the point where there was broken noses, black eyes, and to the point where no staff or students had to break it up because it was that fight.
Do you believe Madison felt bad about that fight, that it was wrong, that he shouldn't have done it?
He did not know.
So he showed no sign of remorse for that fight?
No, all of the sweetness and respect that I have seen from him from our previous sessions has gone all away.
And his punishment, you said he did not believe he deserved it.
Him and the other boys did not believe it was fair that they were suspended.
And you stated that you believe his grudge against this has not gone away.
That is correct.
No further questions.
You may step down. Defense, call your final witness. Well, who do you call?
I would like to recall Officer Bates this time.
No, it's not very much.
No.
We can't, we don't have time.
You got this. Have it up to you. I'd like to bring up Penelope.
Carter. Penelope Carter.
I call Carter to the stand and ask the bailiff to place her under oath.
Do you promise you are going to choose the whole shoes and nothing but the shoes?
Defense, please make your statement.
So, would you say that Madison has been improving his grades since coming to the school?
Yes.
And would you say his conduct has also improved?
Yes.
As well as do you think he's learned anything from the peer mediators?
I do. And Andrea really took to the program and has since it has improved her own anger management, how she deals with that, as well as helped others around her and her detentions out of the class.
Do you think Andrea goes to peer mediators to just skip class, or do you think she goes to it because she actually wants to better her education and better her mentality?
I believe Andrea comes for good reasons. She has really become an advocate of her position amongst her peers and encouraged others to join as well.
As Andrea was at the school, she has excelled in math and science. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
Yeah. And that she has just gotten better, or has made more friends, and has just been a better person in general since coming to the school, right?
That is true. She has grown a good loyal friend group as well as earned respect of her peers.
And you said that Andrea has gone less detentions and suspensions since coming to the school as well, right?
She has. Since, yes.
Thank you. That is all I need.
Does the prosecution wish to cross-examine?
Yes.
Make your statement.
So, in your testimony, you assume Madison's distaste for authority stems from her lack of trust for them. Can you recall a specific reason why she doesn't trust authority?
I cannot.
So it's because of her actions in the past, right?
Where her lack of trust comes from?
Yeah, because she has a really bad reputation that she doesn't like authority, she's rebellious, she's known for this, right? So
As a counselor, I would say it stems from something deeper than school instances.
okay. Now, would you say as a result of the program that she's worked to build a better rapport with classes?
Yes.
Well, her reputation seems to carry forth from what's always done. Now, Ms. Snow recognizes her improvement in math and science class, both for the teacher and for grades. Would you say that she made an effort to do the same in other classes?
She excels in math and science classes, yes. And then I would like to also say that since semester 1 of the previous year and semester 2, she had 2 detentions, the first semester for the second, and then a suspension. And then this year, she has had no detentions. So it has improved.
Awesome. And then, would you say that she made an effort to, make a positive impact on campus?
Yes, I did.
In what way?
Well, she has, as I previously said, really taken to the peer mediation role. And that was not something she had to do, that was something she volunteered for, and I recommend it. And that is a group where you resolve disputes. So she is having a positive impact on the school and her peers, nothing negative in that way.
makes known her suspicions regarding her friends for skipping classes to, I guess leveraging the mediation program to miss classes. Are they allowed to do that?
I have no knowledge of that.
So you have
No
noticed.
specifics.
So have you noticed behavior of her and friends being there often during a certain time? Because it seems to be English class specifically. Now, her grades seem to agree with this from freshman year all the way through junior year. So freshman year she had a GPA of 2.9. Junior year it was 2.8. And sophomore year was also 2.8. There seems to be no overall improvement.
Objection. What is the relevance of this data according to the police brutality of the situation?
Sustained.
Improvement of her behavior. And self-betterment. Now, random question. Did you know Madison smokes? She was smoking during the time of the incident, so, gosh. And then this one last.
Objection once again. What is the relevance of smoking in this situation as she's an adult?
Sustained.
Self-betterment.
But how is self-betterment smoking?
Smoking is bad for you.
Your Honor, she is not an adult yet. She's in the middle of her junior year, so she could have max be 17 and is not legal to smoke.
I didn't mean to talk, but I am.
All right, and then, are there any final statements or pieces of evidence that could convince the jury otherwise of her ongoing behavior in this current state?
I would like to respond to something you had said about her grades not reflecting what you like self-improvement. And I think in my professional opinion, I would say that grades and one's capabilities within schools do not reflect whether or not they are a good or bad person.
You did mention that she made impacts on campus that are positive.
Yes.
Could you provide more?
I'm sorry, the peer mediation group, which she has been involved with and has helped other students resolve their disputes. Is that evidence?
Yes, but according to Lincoln, her behavior hasn't improved.
Wrap it up, please.
That her reputation persists.
The prosecution may now make their closing statement and recommendations to the jury. Oh, you can be dismissed.
Closure to this court case, the mention of the young lady, I quote, suspicious behavior who has been said to have hurt a police officer has been made clear that she is at fault. Opposing sides may disagree with the young lady's actions to contribute to police brutality, but the evidence has been made clear. The police officer was only wanting to accomplish her duties and was indeed altered by the act of violence that the young lady had committed towards her. So it is understandable that her instinct would be to protect not only herself, but any people around her who were at risk of being in danger as well, because that is the duty of a police officer. There may have been said to be excessive force that was displayed to the minor that day, but it is also important to consider that she had reacted appropriately to the suspicious looking minor. Again, we have been brought here due to the case of a delinquent doing harm to a police officer, and the evidence has been made clear. It was proven in this court case that a knife couldn't have been drawn by accident based on the type of knife Madison had. What's more is that Madison had to have intent to pull the knife based on the fact it was not drawn out of Madison's hand when Officer Bates intervened. And the mediation program Madison was a part of did not make much of a difference within her behavior as she kept on showing no improvement. In the process of making a decision for this case, the bias or unfairness should be shown only what is necessary.
The defense may now present their closing statement and recommendations to the jury.
The case of Officer Bates versus Andrew Madison is a case of police brutality. Miss Madison was doing nothing more than standing on the sidewalk with friends, conversing, teasing, but nothing illegal. The officer approached him and intimidated him. The officer made a hasty conclusion that Miss Madison was about to reach for a weapon, when indeed she was reaching for her wallet, which happened to be in the same pocket as a keychain pocket knife. Incidentally, when the officer went to tackle and forcibly arrest Miss Madison, he inadvertently or inadvertently injured my client, causing injuries to her wrist and right leg, cutting her on the knife. It would seem almost impossible and not plausible for her to be able to open the knife as he's detaining her with his knee on her back and her hands around her back. But Officer Bates also sustained injuries, but they were only a result of his forceful detainment of Miss Madison. Bates has a record made known by Officer Major that he likes to take action, make assumptions, and reach conclusions based without evidence. What precedent does this set? Police are sworn to serve and protect the community. Does this mean we have to trump assumptions before discovery, the assumption of guilt before innocence, and hasty arrest before due process? I recommend that my client be not found guilty of assaulting an officer due that he was acting in self-defense of any scuffle he may have gotten in with Officer Bates. And the incident was instigated by Officer Bates when he made a move towards my client in order to forcibly arrest and detain him. Thank you.
Jury, you have now heard the evidence and closing arguments from both sides of this case. The defendant has been charged with assault towards the police officer. You will now determine whether she is guilty or not guilty. The court will now take a recess while the jury deliberates. Court adjourned. Who is the foreperson of the jury? Please stand up. Have you reached a verdict?
Yes.
Okay.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty.
Police officer.